It's the last week really for a group of PGCE students who are about to go out into school, and it's really pulling the threads together that they've had throughout the year about creative teaching. And it's trying to get them to think about the kind of teachers that they're going to be when they start in their roles in September. But something that I feel very passionately about is that you can be as creative as you like as a teacher, and you can be rushing around doing all kind of new and innovative things. But that doesn't mean necessarily that that will mean that you have creative children. So it's that balance between the two. And so I want them to really understand that their skills are to bring out the potential in children.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's really lovely to see you again. We started to have a conversation when I saw you last about creativity. We began to think about what creativity actually is. We tried to get hold of it, because I sometimes think it's a bit like a slippery fish, and you've got to kind of nail it down, because it's one of those words that seems to be in everything. Creative teaching, you even get creative football these days. What is it? What is creativity? What is creative teaching? So the title of my session here is called Being a Creative Teacher. Because it's something I know that throughout this year you've been aspiring to be, and it's what many of your teachers in school have been talking to you about and modelling to you. How you can be creative. And you need to be creative because being a creative teacher means that you can unlock the creativity in children. If I go back to when I was here, at this stage in my career was feeling very excited. I was dying to get into my classroom, dying to actually have my own space, create my own displays. Is that what you're feeling? Beginning to set up my role play area, get a book corner. So excited. I have to say, I don't know if you feel like this, I remember feeling very tired, very exhausted, because I put a lot into my first year. I worked really hard. And I remember also, if I was honest, and actually I often feel like this, I felt slightly anxious. There was enormous expectations on me. There were expectations that after having done this year, I was going to be out there being this inspiring, startling, wonderful, newly qualified teacher. And I think is true probably of all of us. We all have that little doubting voice sometimes in our head which says, oh, can you actually do it? Well, of course you can. And that's what we're going to spend this time together, just thinking again about the kind of skills that you're going to use, and also some of your pedagogical beliefs, why you're going to do what you're going to do. So my repertoire of teaching skills that I've planned to use is that I'm going to teach you as a whole group. I'm doing that now. I'm talking to all of you. And I'm going to, within that time, I also planned a series of group tasks. And my role of the teacher is going to be to steer you through those group tasks towards the intended educational goal that I've got. And I'm going to use talk to do that. I'm going to use talk in different ways. I'm going to use talk to explain things to you, to describe things to you, to make connections with previous learning that you've had. I'm going to use talk to tell stories. But most of all, I'm going to use talk to provoke you, because I want to hear your stories. I want to hear how you're going to be creative teachers. I want to know what you think. So actually, I've done something a little bit scary in this session. I haven't really planned everything I'm going to say. And I'm going to, I hope, with you, kind of co-construct this learning experience, this time we're going to spend together, so that we continue this conversation about creativity. You may wonder why I'm holding my camera. Well, it's partly maybe as a reminder, but I want to explain more clearly what the actual tools that I'm going to use, the teaching tools. And I think that it'll become clearer as we go through, but you'll see that the camera is something that I always have in my toolkit. I'd like you to participate and take risks, engage in the activities, because you as learners are responsible for your own learning. And so to do that, I hope you have a lot of fun doing them. So let's think about the first one. Now, the first task that we're going to think about is what's next? Here you are, NQTs. What's actually going to happen in September? Actually, it might happen before that. I bet that some of you have already got jobs and you know exactly where you're going to be teaching, and maybe you're even going to get the opportunity to go into your classrooms before the end of term. So you're beginning to think about what your classroom's going to look like. You're beginning to think about the kind of teacher that you're going to be. And I wonder if you've begun to think about creativity. How are you going to be a creative teacher? So that's one particular aspect of teaching, maybe you might think, or is it actually embedded in everything you do? Because I think of myself as a creative teacher, and I hope actually that it's actually part of everything I do. Not always easy, but it's something I aspire to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually do an activity which will demonstrate to me quite the kind of picture that you have in your mind of the teacher that you aspire to be, and particularly the creative teacher you aspire to be. Now, in the past, creativity was something that I think people thought only special people had, that very creative people, sort of like boffins in science labs, were the people who were generating new ideas, and they had to be very special people in very special contexts, wearing very special clothes like white coats, or it might be up to kind of bohemian artists who lived in garrets in Paris, and they were the people who were being creative. But I think we have a much broader view of creativity now, and we have a much better understanding about how actually creative develops, and as we know, it develops right from the moment that you're born. It isn't something that just a few people have, it's a potential in everyone, and it's for our jobs as teachers to awaken that potential. Okay, now the first activity that we're going to do is we're actually going to draw a picture. So you all should have a piece of plain paper in front of you and some felt tips. I'm going to ask you to draw, first of all, a head and a neck of a creative teacher. Now you need to think, don't you, about things like, now, what will the facial expression be? Will that person be speaking or singing? Or what will they be doing? Would they be wearing anything? Would they have particular earrings or something like that? What would they look like? Now, when you've drawn the head of that teacher, I want you to fold over the piece of paper so you've just got the head bit sticking down, and you're going to pass it to someone else. Then I'd like you to draw the body, only up until the waist, okay? Now, use your imaginations. Come on, this is going to be fun. This is, you know, what kind of teacher do you think is a creative teacher? What kind of things might they be holding in their hand? How many hands might they have? Because I don't know about you, but I often wish I had more than two. Then you're going to draw from the waist downwards, down to the feet. Again, would a creative teacher be standing as I am, kind of stuck to the spot, or would they be moving around? And again, I'd like you to fold the paper over and pass it to someone near you. So the last thing I want you to do is just to write one word on the bottom. One word that describes the characteristics of a creative teacher. Okay, so off you go. Let's see if you can do the first face. Now remember, when you draw your head, make sure there's a space left so that they can draw the rest of the person on. And think really about those facial features. What's this person saying? How are they saying it? Okay, and when you've drawn a neck, pass it on to the next person. Okay, and now draw the body. Now see if you can draw the legs. Right, what kind of shoes is this creative teacher going to wear? Do they only teach inside, or are they going to be teaching outside?
Trainers.
Would they have to have shoes on for all types of weather? Okay, and finally, can you pass them to someone and ask them please to write one word on the bottom that actually sums up the characteristics of a creative teacher? Turn that page over. Okay, you can open them up now and have a look. Would anybody like to pass me an example so that perhaps we could all have a look at it? So here we have an example, and we have somebody who's very energetic. I'm not sure if that's a wooden spoon or what they're, but if it is, what a wonderful tool to have, because that means that teacher's going to be doing cooking. And as we know, cooking is a wonderful way for children to engage all their senses in the learning. They're very energetic, and they've got, I think, a tissue. Do you think it is poking out of their pocket there, possibly? So let's have a look at some of the other ones. Excellent. I think that sums it up for me. That is exactly what I feel like. I feel like I've got lots of arms doing lots of different things, holding a paintbrush, holding a microphone, jewellery on to adorn me, and looks like I'd be ready to go outside. Let's have a look at one more. Okay, so here we have a risk taker. This is somebody, it looks a little bit like me with my camera, I'm wondering, and paint on their front, which shows that they're engaging in using lots of different resources, carrying books, their legs are moving. So we're kind of beginning to get an idea what you think creativity is. You see it as something active, yeah? Something dynamic, something that is a doing thing, something to do with risk. I think what you actually showed me by doing that activity was that you did see a creative teacher as somebody who was very active, someone who actually, by the way they looked, modelled that they were creative, modelled that they were somebody who was a doer, who was engaged in activity, somebody who was motivating and engaging. Right, what I think we need to do is actually just focus on that word creativity. We need to really think about what that means to be creative, because we're getting a few words now that we've devised. Right, I'm going to invite you now to do an activity which is going to require you to be very creative. What I'm going to invite you to do is to make a hat. And this is going to be a hat that is for a very special purpose. But it's up to you to decide what that purpose is. Unfortunately, you don't have many resources. The only resources I'm going to give you are a large sheet of white paper. And in the process, I want you to think, if you can, at the same time as doing, about actually what it is that is creative about the process you're going through. What it is, what are the skills that you're using, and what the kind of thinking that's going on. Okay, you've got 4 minutes. You're going to make a hat, and one of you, when I say 4 minutes is up, one of you must be wearing the hat, and that person is going to need to stand up and tell the rest of us what your hat is for. Ready, steady, go. Putting it on your head, you've got about 30 seconds left.
Well, this is glue. Yeah, we should sellotape.
Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Make sure it's on someone's head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can the person wearing the hat please stand up? Go. Fantastic. Let's give them a
before you sit down, let's hear where you're going to wear your hat. Where are you going to wear it? Okay, where are we going to wear yours?
To Ascot.
To Ascot. Lovely. How about you?
Perhaps to church on a sunny day.
Lovely idea.
In a forest, because it reminds me of Robin Hood's hat.
Does me too.
On a trip to Amsterdam.
In the kitchen.
On a date, and when it rains, because it's got guttering, so my hair doesn't get ruined.
As an alien coming to Earth.
An alien coming to Earth. We'll stop there, but thank you ever so much. Could you possibly sit down and carefully put your hat beside you?
The previous two tasks have really, I think, identified what creativity is and what they aspire to be as a creative teacher. So now I want them to look at creative teaching, what it looks like actually in the doing. And I've written some stories which I think illustrate teachers who are perhaps very creative or not very creative. And I'm going to ask them really to decide which they think. And I hope there'll be a discussion among them and there'll be some hesitation. And so I'm seeing that I'm kind of provoking them a bit to think a bit further.
Okay, well, when I spoke to you last about creativity, we spent some time thinking about a definition for it, and we actually looked at this definition, which comes from a very important report that was written in 1999. This was written at a time when the literacy hour and the numeracy hour had just been introduced into primary schools, and there were a lot of people who were worried about creativity disappearing in the curriculum. So this committee got together, headed up by Ken Robinson, and they came up with a very, very clear definition of what creativity is. They said it was about imagination, using imagination. And I certainly saw evidence of that when you were making your hats. You generated many new ideas, and actually very quickly. What I suspect you did was you made connections between your previous learning. You've all worn hats or seen hats, and so you used that knowledge to inform you to make your hat. Children don't always have that knowledge, they don't have those experiences, and that's why it's so exciting when you ask children to do creative tasks, because they come up with new and very different answers than we might as adults. The second characteristic that this report identified was that of pursuing purpose. You need to actually apply your imagination to real purposeful tasks, and it's our responsibility as teachers to provide those tasks for children and to steer them along the creative process. The third thing that definition outlined was the need for originality and innovation, for newness. And for each of your hats, each one was new and distinctive. Now, I can't say that for each one of you that they were so original, the ideas, that I'd never seen them before, but they were original within this context. So this definition actually says there's originality, say, for the child within the context. And that's, sometimes for the first time a child you'll observe picking up a car and using it as an aeroplane and going, yeah. Now, that's not the first time I've seen a child use an object for something else, but for that child it might be the first time that they've used their imagination in that way. The fourth characteristic of this definition, which is often the one that's overlooked actually in schools, and it's the one actually I think is key to gluing all the other ones together. It's that of judging value. Children have to be taught to be critical. They have to know what is good or bad about their work, otherwise they can't improve it. They have to be given the space to make mistakes, because it's from mistakes that we learn. So the creative process has to be planned by you as newly qualified teachers to have those aspects of it. So we've thought a little bit now about what creativity is. I think we've caught hold of that slippery fish. I hope we have. We've got some agreed terminology and some agreed common understanding. We've got those 4 words which maybe will help us. And now we need to think about us as teachers. Now what I'd like to do is invite some of you to come down to the front and do an activity along the front to identify what creative teaching looks like. Okay, now what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to imagine that there is an imaginary line here between very creative and not very creative, okay? And I'm going to invite one of you to read out one of these little stories, and we're going to actually decide whether we think it's very creative or not.
A Year 2 teacher introduces the lesson in role. She is dressed up in the role of Little Red Riding Hood. She invites the children to write, as if they were a newspaper reporter, an article for the local newspaper warning children not to talk to strangers in the woods.
So, what do you think? Do you think that that teacher was actually being very creative or not? And you can stand anywhere you like along the line. Where would you place yourself? What do you think? Come and put yourself where you think you'd like to be. What do you reckon? Yeah, where do you think? So imagine this line, so you're all going to be all close, are you? Or are you going to be not
About
there?
there.
About there. So come on, why are you there?
It's been done before. I mean, the actual getting dressed up here brings the children into the role and actually sort of puts them in that role, and they can sort of imagine it. But apart from that, I mean, I think it's been done before already. Sort of.
Yeah, so you don't think it's a very original idea?
Not really, no.
But might it be for the children?
For them, it might be the first time they've ever seen it. So I guess for them, it's quite creative for them. So it's the first time they've seen something, their teacher actually in a role like that. So.
That's a lovely example. Thank you very much. Who'd like to read out another? Would you like to read that card out?
Go on.
Thank you.
Okay. A Year 1 teacher is getting children to think about themselves and their families. She gives each child a paper plate and tells them to make a picture of their faces using buttons, wool and pasta.
Okay, so what do you reckon? Would you all like to stand along the imaginary line? Oh. Okay, so why have you all moved then?
I don't think that's massively creative, so that's why I've moved. But I think that it's quite a normal thing for someone to do, and with a child to do that. I don't think it's a new idea, but it might be new to the children you've got, so it is within the context that you're teaching it in.
How might you make it more creative then?
I suppose you could bring in different mediums for them to choose, different materials for them to choose, because you've limited it there by saying they've only got buttons and wool and pasta, so that kind of limits what they could produce as it is anyway.
Thank you. And do you think actually perhaps you're giving messages to the children by giving them buttons, wool and pasta? I mean, what do you think they'll use the buttons for?
Yeah, it's all pretty obvious, really.
Yeah, the wool,
Hair.
pasta, smile, yes. And the shape of the face?
Well, you've really given them a round plate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's lovely. Okay, so let's just do one more, shall we? Let's have this one. Who would like to read this one? Would you like to read that one? Do you want to give me that one?
Thanks.
A Year 6 teacher invites the class to devise a travel guide for an alien from outside of our galaxy who would like to visit Earth. He organises the children into groups of 4 and provides them with a set of digital images.
And what do you reckon?
I think I'm moving down.
Are you not so sure? Do you think it might be more this way?
Well, the context for them, I think, is pretty good because obviously they're not used to like aliens visiting and what have you, so that's quite creative. I think actually using the images is quite a good idea as well. But yeah, I think it's all right. Good idea.
Yeah, lovely. But obviously it could be improved on. But you're quite excited by this activity, are you?
It says here they've been provided with a set of images. I think if you could have given them the capacity to make their own images and then take the photos of it, that would have brought some more creativity, but it's just within the context that you're working in, so I think it kind of depends how what you're trying to achieve and what you want them to do. So I still think it's quite creative.
Okay. I think that what we began to do in that activity there is began to engage further in this conversation about what creative teaching is. And I think you also demonstrated to me in the task that you did with making the hats that you have a good understanding that a creative teacher is someone who is purposeful, who is clear about the purpose of the teaching that they're going to do and that the progress that the learning is going to make. And they see themselves in a supportive role, that teachers actually are there creating safe, inclusive, yet challenging environments for children to learn. They also see learning, creative learning, happening together, where children actually work collectively and collaboratively, where they listen to each other's views and they build on them. And therefore, they build up relationships which are about reciprocity. They're relationships whereby they listen to each other, where the children listen to the teacher and the teacher listens to the children. And I think that is the number one skill of a creative teacher.
As learners, I want to hear their voice. I want to hear what they feel about it. It's not just me to tell them what I think creativity is. So I'm planning that before the lecture, they're having a cup of tea and I'm going to go around and have a little chat with them. And I've got one question that I'm going to ask them, and that is, how will you teach creatively? And I'll be really interested to see what ideas they give me. Now, I'm going to just record those on my camera, and then I'll take them into the lecture theatre with me and I'll share them with them, because then they can hear each other's views.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to listen to a little bit short piece of video when I did listen to you. And I wanted to hear, I came round earlier today with my camera and I asked you the question, how will you teach creatively? What plans have you got to do? What ideas have you got? And so I'm just going to show you a very short video clip of some of your answers that you gave me earlier today.
Using lots of role plays in the classrooms.
Lots of photographs, interactive media, digi-blue cameras, video, get the kids involved in animation.
Using music wherever I can.
Take the learning outside.
Using interactive resources, lots of hands-on material.
Always keeping it fun for the children and light-hearted.
I'm going to use imaginary friends.
Mine was the same.
Use outdoor learning.
Cross-curricular links. Lots of music.
Using role play.
Getting the children to have fun.
Okay, so that was really interesting to hear what you're aspiring to do. And I think it aligns so well with what I've been saying today. And it was so interesting to hear your views, and I really wish you good luck with that. So what I'd like to do now is to invite you really to think about what I have been saying today. What have I modelled for you in this session? How have I modelled my pedagogical beliefs, my values, my beliefs, my thoughts about learning and teaching? You've been studying here for a year on a campus that is built on the old British aerospace ground. I don't know if you knew that. And that the very first commercial jet, the de Havilland Comet, was actually designed and built here and manufactured. And it's very famous for that. So I'm going to ask you to have a little bit of fun, and on a piece of paper I'm going to ask you on one side of the paper to list all the strategies that I used to teach you today that you think are creative. I expect you might put video down or camera at the top. On the other side, now this is more difficult. I wonder if you can actually identify what my pedagogical beliefs are. What is it that drives me to do what I do? And what I'd like you to do when you've written that, and this is the fun bit, I wonder if you could fold it into a paper aeroplane. And I'm going to stand exactly where I am now. And if anybody's aeroplane gets anywhere near me and lands here, so you've got to be very clever in your design, if it gets here, I'm going to pick it up and I'll read it out. But if it doesn't, we'll see what happens. So off you go. Think for a minute about what you're going to write. Okay, you probably need to get folding now. You may regret this. Okay, are we all ready now? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Off you go. Fantastic. Right.
Fantastic. A sea of aeroplanes. Excellent. Well done. They hit the target. Okay, so I've been enthusiastic. I've had, there's been fun, yes? It's been a little bit risky, it says here. Do you feel a bit risky? But there's been doing, hands-on. And I had a belief in you as learners. That's what it says here, and I certainly did. Okay, now, some of the things I used. My camera, you were all involved. I used video. I did some research and preparation beforehand. I got you drawing and making and group work and talking. All doing words, all ing words. That's a lovely one. Thank you. Let's have a little look at this one. I used a camera, video. I was open, gave open tasks and talk and practical ideas. I involved you all in the learning. I got you to work in different types of groups. I was engaging and inclusive, and I differentiated the outcome. And my beliefs were to make learning exciting, motivating, fun, and engaging. Thank you. Well, I will enjoy reading all the others, and I will gather them all up and have a look at them. But I think just those few that I've read out actually really are very interesting, and it's clear that you and as learners have actually, it shows me something about my teaching in the fact that actually the sessions, the activities and tasks that I planned that perhaps were effective for you as learners to identify what creativity is. It was interesting when you said about my pedagogical beliefs. My beliefs are that all learners can extend their knowledge and deepen their understanding. So I believe that you were all able to learn from the task today, and I set out tasks where you were all engaged. I also believe that learning develops through inquiry, through exploration, through discovery and critical reflection. It's a doing thing, learning, and that's why I had those tasks. And last, I believe that learning is best in a safe, inclusive and challenging learning environment. And I hope that I helped to make you feel safe here so that you would take risks. But the question really is, how are you going to do that in your classrooms? And so I'm just going to finish off today by talking to you a little bit about those next steps. What you're going to encounter when you go into your classrooms in September. I'm going to finish the lecture by actually getting them to reflect on where they are in their professional careers. So I'm very aware that although they feel, I'm sure, absolutely full up of ideas and all the teaching experiences that they've had, and probably pretty tired too, but actually I need to think it's my professional responsibility to think about their nourishment and how they're going to actually sustain themselves as teaching when they get out into school. And so my last activity is really trying to get them to understand that, you know, it's not all over. Actually, it's just about to begin. And it's a very exciting beginning, but that one of the professional tools that they're going to need is to know how to sustain themselves. And actually, I think at the university here, we have a very important part in doing that we can support them, we can continue to have deep and meaningful conversations, which will actually enable them to be creative teachers. I have to say, I feel really excited for you. I feel really excited about what's going to happen to you, many of you, in September in your new roles. And I imagine that you feel like I did at the end of my PGCE year. I felt absolutely full up. I felt full up with ideas and theories and teaching strategies and all this stuff that people have been telling me. And I was dying to get in there and actually get going. But I wonder if the same thing will happen to you that happened to me. This is me. This is a metaphor for me when I started on my teaching career as an NQT. Okay, and I'm full up. You'll see there's a little bit of space there at the top because there's always a bit of space, isn't there, for more learning. But I remember I went in to school before, in the end of the summer term, to meet all the staff that I was going to be working with. And I thought beforehand about the kind of relationships that I wanted to have with them. I wanted them to be supportive colleagues. I wanted them to share things with them. And so I went in, I planned those relationships really, really carefully, as I expect that you'll be doing. And so a lot of energy went into that.
So those relationships that I was making with the staff, those relationships that I was making with the children, took time. It took time to take photographs of all the children and put them up in the classroom so they saw them when I came in. It took time to go around and introduce myself to everybody in the school, including the lollipop lady, so that they all knew who I was. It took time and energy. And then I set about in my classroom. And it was great. I remember I was even doing things like painting walls and had new displays and all the things I collected all year. My postcard collection and all the things I had were going to be in my classroom. And I spent a lot of time, but also a lot of energy. And so when the first day of school started in September, to be honest, I wasn't feeling quite as full up as I had when I left here. I was feeling a bit tired already, and we were just about to start the term. So the next thing, of course, I had to think about was the curriculum, because I got the classroom ready, and now what was I going to teach them? So I had to do my planning. It always takes me a lot longer, perhaps it always seems that way, than my colleagues. So, I was finding weekends, evenings, and times like that. I was planning. And I was trying to make connections. I've always felt very strongly about telling learners, telling children why they're learning something. And so trying to make connections also meant a lot more energy being used. Now the last one I put on there, repertoire. I was beginning, as the term was carrying on, to use up some of the ideas that I'd learned when I was a student. I'd done my maths trail. Yeah, it was great and it'd been fantastic. And I'd used I'd looked back on my notes and I'd used those activities, and I'd done paired work and I'd done different types of talking, but the children had kind of got used to it now, and I needed new ideas. We were coming towards the end of the term. So I was having to spend my weekends and evenings finding out about more things to teach. And we got to the end of my first term, in the autumn term. I have to say, I felt very, very pleased to have got to the end of it, because I was so exhausted. I was really tired, and my batteries were down here. I was empty of ideas. Now, it's really where I want to leave this, but it's also where I want to kind of start the next step, because you have a decision when you get to the end of the autumn term. What are you going to do? Are you going to spend your Christmas holidays doing all those things, getting more organised, getting sure that all your resources are beautifully laminated, and spending your time getting all your displays beautifully done? Or are you going to have a rest and some free time? And are you going to go off and do some exciting things? And I hope, and it's really good to see you nodding your heads, that you're going to go off and do some exciting things. Because I think one of the things about being a teacher is that you need nourishment. This does go down. You will end up sometimes feeling as if you're half empty, because teaching is about giving. It's giving, giving, giving. But it's also about taking things in. Otherwise, you're never going to actually be able to sustain yourself. So what I would suggest that you do is make sure that you build in lots of time for yourself, particularly during the first term and over that holidays, where you can nourish yourselves, and you can nourish yourselves to think creatively. Because I think imagination only comes out in times when you're not feeling stressed, when you are feeling free and not tired. That's the time when you take risks. So make sure you have some of those times. And I'm actually going to offer to support you in that, because we offer here, as you know, an NQT module that supports you in your first year of teaching. So I hope to see you back here again. I hope to see you in January after your first term, and to continue this conversation. And I'll be supporting you along with my colleagues. And I know that your colleagues in schools will be doing that as well. So I wish you lots of luck. I wish I could be out there with you, but I look forward to hearing your stories when you come back, because I know that they'll be very exciting. And yeah, we'll have that conversation again soon. Thank you.
There's three main things that I really hope that students will take away from the lecture. Firstly, I hope that they will dare to be creative themselves. I hope that they will dare to go into their classroom and take a few risks. Secondly, I really hope that they sustain that, I hope that they've got the energy to keep that going, and that they find ways to actually keep that energy level up. And I suppose that's my third one. I hope I see them again. I hope they come back. I hope they realise that professional nourishment actually comes from professional development, and that being a teacher is not something you just suddenly are a teacher. It's an ongoing experience, and I'm really excited about working with them again in the future.